Growing up, I went to a small private school in East Point. I grew up in Hateville in East Point, Georgia. And there, in those tiny little towns, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, even to this day, someone paid for my brother and I have a little brother, he's 4 years younger than I am. Someone paid for my brother and I to attend a place called Pathway Christian School in East Point. And they just decided, my dad was raising us, he was a single dad, he's a plumber. He for sure wasn't even like a plumber that does like well, he was like low totem pole plumber at the time. He's gone on he's a master plumber now, he does big jobs all over the place. But at the time, that was like the beginning of his career, so he for sure didn't have any kind of money to send his two boys to private school. It wasn't gonna happen. So somebody though stepped in, no one's ever told me who did that. So if you're here today, thank you so much. But somebody did. So at this private school, and I'm talking about it was small. Like it was a small school, like there's probably, 150 kids plus or minus 40 or so in the whole school, right? And we went like first to 8th grade, you know what I'm saying? So it's a tiny little school. And there's a privilege that happened in this school. It's like a long-standing tradition. This privilege that happens in the school, when you get into middle school or 6th to 8th grade, they start looking at you for some privileges, some privileges if you've been good, if you're trustworthy, if you're every teacher's favorite, those kind of things, they start looking. And since I qualified for all those categories, then when I got into 6th grade, I was given the honor of stepping onto the safety patrol. And in the safety patrol, you got a badge, okay? You got a badge, you got a sash. The badge went on the sash. It was orange sash, came across you, buckled around your waist, that kind of thing. And your job in the morning, somebody had to hold the door for the kids to come in through car rider line. Once they got into the gym, they all lined up in their classes, and they were supposed to talk quietly just to the person in front of them or behind them, sitting in a line like crisscross applesauce. They got their lunchbox there, they got the book bag there. All the classes are in perfect little lines. And safety patrol was supposed to walk around and make sure no kids were doing nothing crazy, you know what I'm saying? Keep them straight, keep the aisles clear, make sure they stay kind of quiet. Just make sure that all the things are like happening in the room. And so I love doing it because I got a badge. I was like mall cop on steroids, you know what I'm talking about? And so as I'm walking around, and this wasn't my 6th grade year, I think it was the 7th or 8th grade year, because I got all 3 times, safety patrol, okay? Did I get kicked off my 8th grade year for getting in a fight? Yes, but that's another story. Before all that though, so I'm walking around, and I'm walking down this aisle, and this little 2nd grader, he's got his bag in the aisle. And so I'm like, you know what, let me help this little kid out. So I'm like, hey buddy, we gotta keep this aisle safe, or aisle clear, it's a safety issue. I don't know, that's what they told us to say. So I take the bag, I put it back in line. I go around making my rounds, I'm coming back around, and all of a sudden, the bag's back out there. They're playing. He brought some toys he was playing. And I said, look, I'm gonna turn a blind eye to the toys you ain't supposed to have, but it's a safety issue, you know what I'm saying? I gotta keep this thing clear. And so I'm like, hey, we gotta put this bag back in there. And so we put it back in there, I come around another again, and I'm like, hey dude, I done told you twice, okay? I done told you 2 times. You can't have your book bag in this aisle right here. You can't do it. You understand? Keep it out. And the little 2nd grader looks at me and he goes, make me. And I was like, okay, watch this. That's not the fight. That's not the fight. That wasn't it. But it's then I realized I was just a mall cop. I had no authority. Like, what was I gonna do? You know what I'm saying? Like, I had a badge. Maybe my golf cart had a little wheel light on it or whatever. But, at the end of the day, what could I actually do? You know what I'm saying? Nothing. I think a lot of times we sit in church and we hear some thoughts that God has for us. Or maybe we even open our Bible from time to time or pull it up on our phone and we're like, I'm gonna give this a shot. And we start reading something and we get to a place where it kind of infringes on our good time that we're having. And that's our response. Oh yeah, God, make me. Make me. I'll tell you though, you're in pretty good company. The church had just gotten started. I mean, it's like a baby church. It's months old. We haven't gotten to years yet. It's like months old. It's growing. It's wild because everyone knew, whether you were a Christian or not, everyone knew there was a guy named Jesus that had lived. He was a rabbi. He was supposed to be a Jewish rabbi, but he kind of went off the reservation a little bit. Like just kind of went bonkers and started talking about this other kingdom that didn't quite line up with this Jewish kingdom they thought they were building. And everybody was aware of this guy. And in particular, there was this really small group of people that just swore to everybody that after he was crucified by the Romans, that should have been the end of this little movement. But this little group of people kept telling everyone, we saw him resurrected. Like, I get it. We saw him on the cross just like everybody else, right? We're aware. We know he went in the tomb, that whole thing, that's done. But I promise you, we saw him resurrected. And it wasn't just a small little group. Like up to 500 people saw him resurrected after the Roman cross incident, crucifixion, which is wild. And so the church is spreading. It is growing. It's going like crazy. I mean, so many great things are happening. They're having to learn how to overcome some problems. With it, the church is not just talking about Jesus and the resurrection. They're taking what they know about Jesus and the principles that he applies and teaches them in their life, and they're saying, hey, how do we reach out into our world? One of those things was they were taking care of widows. And there was a food issue. There was a cultural issue between two groups of widows who spoke different languages, came from different parts of the country, and they decided they were going to argue about food that was provided to them. And so the church had to figure this out. They're like, hold on, whoa. We're supposed to be doing good. We can't have, like, in the middle of our doing good, all this drama and chaos and, like, pulling hair. And we can't do that. And so they solved it, though. And they had a great system going. Everybody was provided for. I mean, it was going. It was spreading so much. There was this guy from Ethiopia who worked in the royal family down in Ethiopia. And the Bible, there's a guy named Luke. Dr. Luke is a physician, a historian, who documents all of these things that happened in the early church. And Dr. Luke tells a story about this guy who came up from the royal crew that was working in the royal family. Came to Jerusalem because he was a God-fearer, God worshiper. And so he came to the temple just to kind of check out and to worship and to figure out, hey, what is God? What is this whole thing about? And to kind of pay respects, all those things. And as he was leaving Jerusalem to go back to Ethiopia, he was reading a scroll that he picked up out of the Old Testament, or we would call it the Old Testament. If you're new to Bible study, Bible's got two parts. Old Testament talks about the creation of the people of God. Ultimately, it really just talks about why we need Jesus. And then there's the New Testament, which talks about the birth of Jesus, the teachings of life of Jesus, and then the results of those teachings. That's all in the New Testament. This guy was reading a scroll from the Old Testament. And in the scroll, he was just reading it. And one of the really good friends of Jesus was like walking on the road. And here's this guy like reading out loud this scroll. And he just asked, he stops the chariot. He said, hey man, do you know what you're reading? And the guy's like, honestly, no, but I'm doing my best, right? Anybody else read the Bible and you're in the same place? You're like, I'm trying, you know? And so he's like, you want me to tell you? And he's like, yeah. So he hops in the chariot. Chariot keeps going, right? Chariot, like they're still going to Africa, still going to Ethiopia from Jerusalem. And so they're just going down the road. And so he begins to share with them. He's like, hey, this passage that you're reading, it actually points to one of my really good friends that I know personally. This passage that you're reading talks about a guy that I know. His name is Jesus. He shares Jesus with him. He shares Jesus with him, and all of a sudden, this guy that's in the royal, not in the technically family. He works for the royal family. He sees a body of water, and he's like, bro, there's water. Is there any reason I can't be baptized? Philip looks at him and is like, no. Pull his chariot over, skirt, flashers on. And they get out, and he takes him into the lake, and he's like, boom, here we go, baptized. That guy keeps going to Africa. So now all of a sudden, the church is growing. Now we got a guy and the royal family, like working for the royal household, that's taking Jesus to Africa. The church is doing so many incredible things at the beginning of what we're going to walk through, a big chunk of it, in a place called the Book of Acts. This is where Dr. Luke, the historian, where he begins to chronicle all of the early church. And then we get to chapter 9, and I just want to read this to you and kind of get started But that's kind of the background of where this verse starts. Chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. Meanwhile, so that meanwhile, I just summarized all the meanwhile, right? All those things were going on. While that was happening, meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. Well, that's not nice, you know? He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. So at this point, the church is growing. It's doing really well. The Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, are done with the Jesus movement. They're like, that's it. We've had enough. They unleashed this guy named Saul, and Saul's one thing is like, I'm done. I'm done, and I'm about to do something about what I'm done about. And so Saul starts going around and arresting people who are part of the way. Now, they didn't call each other Christians back then. That wasn't even a thing. They didn't call each other Christ followers. They call each other people of the way. What is the way? Jesus said it. Jesus said, I am the way, truth, life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. And so who are these people? We are people of the way, people of Jesus. They are people who follow Jesus. They are disciples of Jesus. They're people who learn and then implement the words of Jesus. And Saul says, I've looked in a bunch of places in Jerusalem. I think it's time to take this show on the road. I would like to go to Damascus. I just need some letters from Jerusalem giving me some permission and some encouragement that when I get there, if I find some more of these the way people, I can bring them and put them in prison back in Jerusalem. Will you give me those letters? The religious leaders are like, yes, this is exactly why we have you. What do you need? And so he gets the letters. Now, I want to stop for a second and say, hey, when we read this passage, Acts 9, 1 and 2, it says, meanwhile Saul, and then I just gave you a little hint, a taste of what he's trying to accomplish. I need to give you a little more background information on Saul because it's going to help you understand really where we're going. Saul, if I had to describe him in contemporary terms, I would say this. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of the city of Tarsus. He signed with Team Pharisee. He was the MVP of the entire league. And his only assignment, shut down Team Jesus. That's it. Saul gives us his own resume, and I want to just read you his resume. Here we go. Circumcised on the 8th day. Anybody put their circumcision on their resume, by the way? Just curious. You didn't. I don't know who said A, but if you're looking for a job, I'm telling you, look, I don't give a career advice, but I wouldn't. You do you, though. Circumcised on the 8th day, of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, in regard to the law, a Pharisee, as for zeal, persecuting the church, as for righteousness based on the law, faultless. Now, when we read that, I get it. There's a lot, it's like, okay, this doesn't look like a resume. Let me break it down. We're just going to walk through them real quickly. Circumcised on the 8th day. In other words, I've been doing this religious thing since I was born. Like that whole idea, when he says circumcised on the 8th day, immediately, that's not a medical procedure. That is a religious procedure. That's not a, hey, let's do this in the hospital because this makes sense medically. This is our faith. We are immediately uniting this child to a historic line of faith. Saul isn't some late bloomer. He didn't jump on the bandwagon of Judaism when things got popular or the temple became this big thing. He was raised in the system. He has played not only in the system, he has played by their rules from day one. He says, I'm of the people of Israel. In other words, I'm not just in the faith, I'm actually in the right bloodline as well. I'm of the people of Israel. I didn't just like assimilate into Judaism. No, this is my heritage. It's not just what I believe. This is who I am, of the tribe of Benjamin. In other words, not only is this who I am, my last name is a pretty big deal last name. I'm not just from any family in Judaism. I'm from the tribe of Benjamin. Remember the one who produced Israel's first king? Check my family tree. It's impressive. A Hebrew of Hebrews. He says, look, I didn't just grow up around the culture. I've lived it. I'm not watered down. I don't compromise. I don't mix languages or customs. I am pure blood, hardcore. In regard to the law, a Pharisee. In other words, when it came to knowing and enforcing the Bible, he was elite. Pharisees weren't casual readers. They memorized the law. They enforced it among everyone else. And then they added their own extra rules just to create safeguards so that people didn't even get close to breaking the actual law. As for righteousness based on the law, faultless. Now, if you've been following along, you're like, whoa, you skipped one. I actually did skip it. I'm going to get to it in a second. So let's handle this one first. As for righteousness based on the law, faultless. In other words, if following the rules made you right with God, I'm crushing it. From the outside, Saul's perfect. Now, let's go back up one phrase. As for zeal, persecuting the church. This is the centerpiece of Saul's identity. Like when you think through, who do I want to be as a Jew? This word, zeal, it's an enormous deal. Now, zeal is not a word we use a lot. Like we don't walk around like, man, she sure is zealous. Like we don't do that. But so we need to spend a little bit of time to really understand what Saul's attempting to say in his own resume. See, zeal in his world wasn't just about personality or some deep passion. Zeal for him had deep, long-standing Jewish roots. Zeal for Saul is what made people of his people famous. Let me give you a couple of examples. There's a lot when we read the old Jewish texts, when we read the Old Testament. There's a lot of examples. Let me just give you a few highlights. There was a guy by the name of Elijah. Elijah was a prophet. Elijah went toe-to-toe with 450 Baal priests and prophets. It was the setting was a mountain called Mount Carmel. And he invited them. He was like, look, let's just throw down. You bring your God, I'm going to bring mine. We're going to have a contest, and then winner takes all. And so they show up. I'm not going to go through the whole story because it's a pretty incredible but long story, and maybe I'll tell it probably spring next year. But it's an incredible story. He goes toe-to-toe with them. Elijah wins. And when he says winner take all, he means, your life. He slaughters them all. He has them arrested, and he executes every single one of them. All 450 slaughtered right there. And the Jewish people praised him for it because of his zeal for the Lord. It wasn't just Elijah. There's a guy named Jehu. Jehu was a military leader. Now, Jehu never, at least that we know of, never had any desire to be king. But one day, a guy named Elisha, different than the guy we just talked about because he was Elijah, Elisha shows up to Jehu's place, takes him in a private room and says, hey, the Lord wants you to be king. Anoints him as king. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, I know. It's wild. You got a mission. here's your mission. There's a king, there's a queen, we need them gone. We need them gone. There's some people, there's some prophets, there's the false religion of Baal, we need it out. It's polluting God's people, it's polluting the nation of Israel, we need it out. We need to rid ourselves of this foreign influence, get it gone. So he does. He shoots the king with an arrow, that was easy. And then as he's riding in to the town where the queen is, her name's Jezebel, maybe you've heard of her. As she's riding into the town where Jezebel is, Jezebel sees him, is out a window way high up, and she shouts down to him. She shouts down to him. And as they're having this little bit of a conversation, and now Jehu, if any of you have actually watched any movies where there's a military commander that's like really good in with all the military guys, and like there's political people that have no idea what it's like to be boots on the ground kind of guy, that's what's happening here. So Jehu looks up in the tower, he's like, hey, is there anybody up there with me? And 3 guys come to the window and they're like, we are. And he just simply looks at him and goes, throw her out the window. And they do. They pick her up and they throw the queen out the window. And then the Bible tells us that when she hit the ground, her blood splattered all over his horse and the wall. I'm telling you, it's in there. Go read it yourself. Where are the new 5th graders? I told you this was going to be fun. I told you it was going to be fun. It's good. We're not even done. After she hit the ground, then he trampled her with his chariot and his horse. And we're still not done. Then they unleashed the dogs and they watched them eat her. I know. And guess what? Throughout Jewish history, guess what he's celebrated for? His zeal for the Lord. Now to my favorite. Now, this guy, you can pronounce his name one of 2 ways. We can pronounce it probably how he would appreciate it being pronounced. Phinehas. That's hard. So we just do it Southern, Phineas, okay? There's a point in time with the people of God where there was a tribe that was close to them, the Moabites. And evidently the Moabites produced some ladies that were very attractive. And the Israelite guys, the Jewish guys were like, hey. And they could not keep to themselves. I'm trying, parents, with the new, I'm trying. They couldn't keep to themselves. And so they started having some relationships, lots of relationships. And with those relationships, it wasn't just the relationship. They brought their false gods into the influence and the lives of those guys. And so all of a sudden, there were people of the nation that God had chosen and was calling out to do a really big purpose. Eventually, we get Jesus from this group of people, right? Big mission. All of a sudden, like, they're worshiping other gods because of the relationships that were taking place. I'm running out of ways to say that, but you get what I'm saying. God got so upset because he's like, look, no, number one, you're cheating sexually in your relationship. You're cheating with this other crew. And then on that, you're cheating on me. Like, in terms of your worship and your God, you're cheating on me. And so a plague starts. And a plague, it's just wiping them out. 24,000 people have died because of this plague. The leaders of the nation of Israel have gathered at the tent of meeting with God, and they've gathered and they're like wailing, they're crying, they're begging, they're pleading, they're praying, all of them together. And they're just begging, like, please, God, stop. Show us what we need to do. And in the middle of this, like everybody's watching, in the middle of this, one of the Israelite guys had been hanging out with the Moabites. He brings the girl into their camp like it ain't no big deal, walks right past where all of his leaders are begging God to stop, goes over to his tent, opens the tent, lets her in, goes in behind her, and starts playing Xbox. What they're doing. They weren't playing Xbox. But Phineas, he's fed up. He's like, no. He goes and he gets a spear. He goes and he walks into their tent. This is how you know they weren't playing Xbox, because he puts it through both of them at the same time. One thing through both of them. If they're side by side playing Xbox, that doesn't work. But they got it. So both of them went through the guy, done. They're dead. And guess what? The people of God inside of the Bible celebrates him for, guess what? Zeal for the Lord. So when Saul says zeal on his resume, it's not just a descriptor that's like, oh, and by the way, I'm zealous. No, he's saying, I'm like those guys. Like, I am a part of that heritage. And when he says zeal, persecuting the church, he said, hey, I'm Phinehas. I'm Elijah on Mount Carmel. I'm Jehu in the face of Jezebel. This church, this people of the way, zeal meant you were willing to take action, even violent action, to protect the purity of God's people. In Saul's mind, he wasn't a bad guy. He was the one saving Israel from corruption. He saw the Jesus movement, the people of the way, as anti-God, a distortion of the faith that he loved. One scholar puts it this way. His name's N.T. Wright. Zeal meant stopping at nothing to purge Israel of anything or anyone that threatened her identity as the holy people of God. So Saul wasn't foaming at the mouth. He was calculated. He wasn't unstable. He was strategic. And he was very, very motivated. And the truth is, he was winning. The problem was, he was winning the wrong fight. Maybe you can identify with this statement. Sometimes the most dangerous place to be is confidently wrong. And it's at this moment in Saul's life. Zeal, let me introduce you to Jesus. So Saul has his letters. He's headed to Damascus. We pick up in verse 3. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? Saul asked. I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting, he replied. Now get up, go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. So he's headed to Damascus. On his way in, this light from heaven, he describes, flashes all around him. It blinds him. He can't see. And there's a voice that says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Now I want to pause here for a second, because for sure when Saul gives his resume, he doesn't say, I'm persecuting Jesus. He says, zeal, persecuting the church. But the voice says, I'm Jesus, by the way, you are persecuting me. You're persecuting me. This same man who thought he saw everything so clearly was suddenly blinded. He has no more control, no more swagger, just darkness. Darkness. This guy that when he walked into the room, everyone got quiet. Or maybe they stood up or stood at attention. For sure, they at least whispered to their neighbors and said, hey, man, look, do you see who just walked in? Are you paying attention? That guy all of a sudden has to pick himself up off the dirt because a light knocked him down, blinded him, and guess what? the Bible tells us someone had to hold his hand and walk him to the next city. So you got the guy that's in charge of everything, got letters from Jerusalem to go to another city and arrest people to put them in prison for their religious beliefs. And all of a sudden, he can't even make it to the next city without some other grown man holding his hand saying, hey, come on, follow me. No, don't step on that. Watch out. Here's a rock. This is a step. We're going to have to step up. Ready? Step 1, step 2. This is where Saul's at. He gets to Damascus. And in that particular city, there was a follower of Jesus named Ananias. And the Lord came to Ananias in a vision and said, hey, I need you to get up. I need you to go to a house, but a very particular house on Straight Street, the house of Judas. And when you get there, ask for a man named Saul of Tarsus. He's currently praying. And then I want you to lay hands on him because he's blind and I want him to be able to see. That's the message that Ananias is given. House of Judas on Straight Street. Ask for Saul of Tarsus. He's praying right now. I want to heal him. I'm going to use you to do it. Go put hands on him. Now, Ananias, I think appropriately so, doesn't just get up and go. He's like, oh, God, Lord, that's what he says. Lord, Ananias answered, I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your holy people in Jerusalem. And he has come here with authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name. I like what he's doing there. He didn't say, no, that's going to put me in some danger, God. He's like, let me remind you what he's already done to your people. I'm your people. Let me remind you, he's got letters to arrest our people. I'm one of those people. That's what he's saying. Are you sure about this? Because I've heard through the grapevine, I've heard this is what he does. God responds. But the Lord said to Ananias, go. This man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Now, I want to unpack two things. We're going to leave this verse on the screen for a second. I'm going to get to it. Let me unpack a couple things. First, he says, look, here's the deal. I get that you understand what he's been doing. The rumors are true. All that's true. But I've got a purpose for him he's not aware of yet. And that purpose is very specific. He's going to take my message of Jesus that you already believe in to the Gentiles and their kings. Here's the deal. Ain't no Jewish man getting an audience with the king of a Gentile country. It ain't happening unless you're a Roman citizen, which Saul was. And so as he says, I got a plan for him. He doesn't know it yet. I got a purpose. So I ain't worried about what he had been doing. I'm worried about what he's going to do because of what he can do, because of the potential in him, because of what I'm making him into be. So I don't think y'all going to kings of the Gentile country. So go do it. And then I loved how he flipped it on its head. See that verse? He says, I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Ananias is thinking, if I go do what you say, God, I'm going to suffer. And God says, let me just tell you something. If anybody's about to suffer, it's about to be him. And I'm actually going to tell him how much he's going to suffer before he suffers. So go do what I asked you to do. And so he gets up. He walks over to Straight Street, to the house of Judas. He knocks on the door and says, I'm here to see Saul of Tarsus. He's like, yeah. He's in there praying. Verse 17. Then Ananias went to the house and entered it. Placing his hands on Saul, he said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you were coming here, has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Now, I do like what Ananias does here. He doesn't just walk in and it's like, okay, hey man, I'm going to pray for you and you're going to be able to see. He reminds Saul, hey, remember that guy that blinded you because you just looked at him wrong? He sent me here. You know what I'm saying? Just in case you got some ideas in your little head when you start to see, I'm just reminding you who sent me, okay? Jesus sent me. Lord and Jesus, he sent me. Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes and he could see again. He got up and was baptized. And after taking some food, he regained his strength. I find it fascinating, just wild to think that by far the most religious guy in the room at that moment, honestly, probably the most religious guy other than the high priest himself back at the temple, his first thought when he could see was baptism. You don't get anybody who knows the Bible better than Saul. The Bible they had at the time, the Old Testament, right? You don't get anybody that. But his first thought, after being introduced to Jesus, after prayer, his first thought is, I can see. I want to be baptized. Now, what I don't want you to hear is that you got to memorize the entire Old Testament to get baptized. What I want you to hear is that when Saul first starts interacting with Jesus, that's when baptism takes place. Not before Saul has figured out what to do with his belief in Jesus. Not that Saul has figured out the theology of how this Jesus is the answer to all the prophecies of his Old Testament heritage, Jewish heritage. He didn't have any of those answers yet. Not that Saul knew how to write anything about this, what we would say today is the gospel or the good news about Jesus. He didn't have any of those things figured out. The only thing he knew was Jesus is real. And he's who those way people were saying he was. I know he died. I know he was crucified. I didn't believe he'd resurrected. But now I do. For some of you, that's where you're at, and you keep putting it off for some reason because you got to get something figured out. And I would just say, why don't you let Jesus help you get it figured out? Or you got some excuse about how you're not good enough. You and I, all of us, we will never be good enough. That's the whole point. Baptism isn't some spiritual milestone that when you've gotten to a place, now you can achieve it. Baptism is a beginning. It's where things begin. If that's you, I would say maybe follow Saul's lead this time. You can text the word begin, 678-661-6330. If you miss it, you can just find it on Google or any place. Our phone number's listed, it's the same one. If you get through this afternoon, you're like, oh shoot, what was the name? Just text whatever you want in and make it make sense that you want to talk about baptism. The first time you try to spell baptism, you might not spell it right. So even if you look like a kindergartner and do it phonetically, we'll still figure out what you're talking about, you know? But if you want to begin that conversation, let's begin that conversation. See, I think since we're talking about you, let me ask you some questions. Let me say a few statements that hopefully evoke some thinking and reflecting. Maybe you've been winning in life in ways that don't actually matter. Like maybe you got some success. Maybe you have some momentum in your career. Maybe you've earned some respect. But deep down, you know that none of it's built on a right foundation. You see, Saul had all of that. His resume speaks for itself. Jesus still had to stop him in his tracks. You see, when we get here to this place in our life, when we're recognizing some of these things, there's only one response for every single one of us. It's the exact same response. However, it can mean two different things. We hear the words of Jesus and we have to make a decision. Should we put them into practice? And we hear the words of Jesus and we feel something and it's like, we should make an adjustment. I don't know if I can make that adjustment. We pray for courage, but I don't know if I got the courage. But I hear the words of Jesus. I hear these thoughts that God desires for me. And we get one response. Every one of us respond the exact same way. We just mean two different things. It's either this: I hear you, Jesus, but I'm looking back at you from the gym floor with my book bag in the middle of the thing, and I'm just looking at you, safety patrol man, and I'm saying, make me. Make me. Or we hear the words of Jesus. We start to feel that he wants us to make an adjustment, that we should put something into practice. And we look up from the floor at God and we simply also still say, make me. But not make me as in, I bet you won't make me. Make me as in, please God, make me. Mold me. Take me from who I am and make me into who you want me to be. Make me into who I am called to be. My make me is not defiant, it's an invitation. My make me is not obstinate. My make me is, God, please, please, make me. Do you need a Damascus Road moment for you to change course? Do you need one of those? I'm telling you, I've looked around the room at the 11 and I've talked with so many of you that have had Damascus Road moments. And I guarantee people that haven't had it yet, if they were to stand up, some of these guys I've had conversations with would have stand up, they would all tell you, you don't have to go to prison to find Jesus. You will, but you don't have to. Let's not do that. Or you don't really have to lose your family to become a man of faith. Like that might be what it takes for some of us. But gosh, why? Let's avoid those things. Let's say, hey, I don't need a Damascus Road moment. I don't need you to blind me. I don't need you to put me in that situation. I would rather just surrender and say, no, don't make me. God, would you make me? Don't let me get to the Damascus Road moment. Keep me from that. Some of us are just too hard at it, though. But you don't have to be. You don't have to be. Some of you are already in the dark. You had your moment and the lights are out. And you're not even sure how you're surviving. For sure, it feels like someone's got to hold your hand to even take a step because you keep falling all over yourself. And you don't know which direction to go, and it's just darkness. I want you to hear this. Don't mistake the dark for abandonment. Don't mistake the dark for abandonment. Because the truth is, I believe your blindness might actually be the way to clarity. Because blindness requires you to let someone else lead you. And that can actually be a really great thing. So maybe instead of fumbling around in the dark, maybe just go to your knees in a place of submission and put your hand up and say, lead me. Instead of trying to figure out your way, to say, you know what? On my resume, it says zeal. And so blindness cannot stop this zeal, right? A plague, did the plague stop Phinehas? Did it stop him? No. Okay. So give me your best shot, God. I'm still telling you. Put my name down in the history books of my people as one of zeal for the Lord. So blind, add it to the list. Or it could be on our knees, God, I don't want to take another step without you. In fact, I'm going to stay here until you grab my hand or send someone full of your Holy Spirit to take my hand and lead me. I will not lead myself. I'm not going to stumble around in the dark anymore. I'm not going to be angry at you because I keep running into walls that I can't see coming or trip over obstacles I can't see coming. I can't be mad at you because the whole time you've told me, if you'll just let me lead you, I'll lead you around these things. I lead you over them. I lead you through the mess. I can't be mad at you because you've given me an invitation, God, and I've just said, no, I can't be mad at you. So I'm going to pray to you, stick my hand out and wait for you to lead. In other words, you're saying, make me. Please, make me. You see, Saul thought that the light ruined his life. The truth is, it saved it. It saved it. He was blind, but he finally saw. He had lost control, but he had finally surrendered. Yeah, he had to give up on his plan. But it's in doing that he actually found his purpose. I think this is a true statement. Blind with Jesus beats bold without him. Blind with Jesus beats bold without him. So which are you? Which make me are you? Make me or make me?